For those of you who have just joined us, welcome. And we're all together watching and enjoying the second day of the 53rd Jalsa Salana. We're coming to you live from the MTA International Africa studios here in Hadikatul Mahdi in Alton, UK. We'll now start our first studio discussion program of the day. The topic is something that has to do with the youth, an important part of the framework of any community and society. What roles do members of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community play towards the empowering of our youth? We see that especially in this day and age, the youth are facing more and more challenges than ever before, from the rise of extremism to social pressures and identity crisis, and you name it. And how are the youth of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community combating these challenges? But I'm not here to discuss this alone. I'm joined by a very experienced panel of my brothers, one that hails all the way from Ghana, Nasir Ahmad Bonsu, who is actually the national president of the Youth Auxiliary Organization of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in Ghana. Welcome, my brother Nasir Ahmad Bonsu. And next to him is Abdul Lodi. He is the one that's responsible, National Secretary for Khidmat-e-Khalq, and that is service to humanity. And he lives here in the United Kingdom serving, and I'm helping out the national president of the auxiliary organization here in the United Kingdom. Welcome, gentlemen. I'm here to talk about a very important topic about our youth and how they face challenges in the society, how they combat those challenges to make sure that they're responsible youth that serve their nation. I'll start with you, Nasir Ahmad Bonsu Saab, coming from Ghana. If you can briefly tell us your role as national president of the community in Ghana, the Youth Association in Ghana. It must be a huge task, and that keeps you awake all night. Could you briefly tell us what it is that your role entails?
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The roles and the responsibilities played by my humble self is enormous, like you rightly said. And as the president of the Majlis Qudam al-Ahmadiyya, you see to a whole lot of things, and that's basically the tarbiyat aspect of the youth. And so one most important thing that we are mostly critical to it is the tarbiyat issues, and that is salat. So as the president of the Majlis, we make sure that for every youth to be able to grow and become leaders and become very successful, we can't do away without salat. And so we have put in measures to ensure that salat in itself is or should be seen as something that we normally say it in congregation. You know, these days the youth is fond of having, say, salat in isolation. And so one aspect that we have been hammering on and trying to urge the youth to engage themselves in saying salat in congregation. And that alone, that we think when we engage ourselves in congregation in salat, then can we have the success that we all dream of in the near future.
I think that's very important because you look at the nature of the salat, the prayer in the Muslim religion, in the religion of Islam, it's something that brings us together as a community. So if you can win your youth, as they say, showing up is 80% of the work already, then that's the group that you can use to do a lot of things. So Abdullah, I'm coming to you specifically in the United Kingdom. And I'll start off with something that's very thought-provoking, something that hits the news all the time. And that is youth of this nation, generally speaking. Some of them have unfortunately leaned towards, I wouldn't talk about the drugs and the alcohol and stuff like that, something more disturbing, and that is recruitment of terrorist groups like ISIS. We've seen youth leaving this country, the West, going to places where they think they're fighting in the name of God, sacrificing their lives, as they would say. How does the Ahmadiyya Muslim community ensure that, and for the record, zero record of any form of terrorism by any Ahmadiyya Muslim across the world? How do we ensure that in the United Kingdom?
I mean, you're absolutely right. By the grace of Allah, we don't have any occurrences of any radicalization. And I mean, there must be a reason behind it, right? So I mean, we work closely with our youth members, with all members. And I think the main point is keep them as close as possible to the Jamaat itself, right? And I mean, from our perspective, we have the best guidance in the world. from Hazuri Akhtas, may Allah be his helper. And I mean, we are simply just trying to implement his guidance into a practical way and just engaging our youth members, for example. So as long as we keep them engaged, provide activities where they can take part in, help them with certain issues that they face these days. I mean, there's many issues that a young British Muslim faces these days. So we have to be proactive with it. And obviously, we just need them to understand the spiritual benefit. And sometimes we do that by showing them the materialistic benefits as well. So, for example, mental health is a big concern, and it's always been ignored. So we try to provide them support proactively. We open a discussion, get together, and people ask questions. That's it. We have a professional panel, and we just try to open up, and afterwards we provide support. And that's just one of the things. There's many other things that the youth needs these days, and it's just being there for them on one side, and the other side is actively promoting what Hazuri Akhtas is telling us on a weekly basis, and translating that into a practical sort of way to get them engaged. And I think that is the key, because we are getting so much guidance by Hazur. We should be, there's so much blessings that we are getting this, and it shows that is the reason why we don't have such cases by the grace of Allah.
And I think one side of this, as you said, is leadership, to ensure that their needs are being served, and to make sure that they are engaged. And coming to you, Nasir Ahmad Said, what are some of the ways that, for example, in Ghana, you and your team, what are some of the specific ways that you're keeping the youth in Ghana occupied and engaged to ensure that they don't go around looking for things they need outside, some of the activities maybe?
One of the things that my humble self and my team normally do is, in Ghana we have practical life stories of people who have served and the kind of benefits or the kind of success that they've chalked. I mean, spiritual success and the material aspect too. So we normally relate to them these stories to bring to bear the kind of life that they went through and the successes that they have chalked. And some aspects of these stories I would want to share if time will permit us. We have people like the lives of late Al-Hajj Yusuf Ahmed Adusei. This was a man who was not a missionary, but his whole life was just like a missionary. At a point in time, he became very rich, he became very wealthy. He was endowed with richness, and he was affected. His knee, he had a problem, an ailment that affected his knee. So he traveled all the way to the US, to Canada, to a whole lot of places to find remedy for this ailment. And in one time, after he had said tahajjud prayers, and he was doing zikr, when he was doing the zikr, he relates to us that a man, before that, there was a Quranic recitation that he had as he was doing the zikr. And he saw on his wall that Quranic recitation that he had singing or reciting. He saw on the wall, Inna alladhina qalu rabbuna Allah summa istaqamu tatanazzalu alayhim al-malaika alla takhafu wa la tahzanun. As he was doing the zikr, this Quranic recitation was written on the wall in his room. And the moment the recitation ended, a man just appeared in his room. He touched his knee, the affected area. And as far as the doctors were concerned, they said if it still persists, he's going to get his leg amputated. So the man touched his knee and told him that no fear should it come upon him. The ailment will go forever. After he said that, the man just disappeared. So these are the stories that we relate to them. That even though he had wealth, even though he had that much of wealth that he could get that ailment, I mean, he could get the remedy of that ailment, but that richness, that wealth, was not able to treat that ailment. But then it's the Quranic ayah that was recited, that those who say that their Lord is Allah and have firm faith and are steadfast, angels descend upon them to tell them that no fear shall come upon them, nor should they grieve.
Absolutely. I think that's a very inspiring story. And for you to hear that, you can aspire to attain your goals, but do not forget the spiritual aspect of it. Because at the end of the day, it's God Almighty Himself that's the healer, that's the provider. And if He doesn't provide for you, you may end up, in doom. So as I'm coming to you, Lodi Saab, I know in your specific role as the Secretary of External Affairs, as you call it, or Service to Humanity, we said on one aspect that is serving the youth to make sure that their needs are met. What do we expect our youth to do in terms of service?
I think in terms of the service to youth, wherever they need help. So as mentioned, previously, there's issues that we face in this country, especially what we were talking about now, materialism, and it can cause a lot of problems, obviously. So we try to show another perspective of wealth, as Sadr Saab just mentioned, that the spirituality side of things. So we provide a lot of service sometimes just to get them to the mosque, just to gather with them at the mosque. So there's things like sports that happens all the time, different sports, not just sort of national tournaments, but also regularly on the grassroots levels, just sports activities. And the criteria for the organizers is, look, pray together after the session or before the session. So people get together in mosques. These days there's function halls, and you can play badminton. Sometimes people play, football nearby. I live myself in Manchester, and we just walk 5 minutes and we're on a football pitch. So we either pray before, depending on the time, and afterwards we can gather again. But the point is that work around the spirituality side of things, provide these things, but don't forget, offer support, offer help, offer career guidance, whatever they need, right? But always sort of add a pinch of the spirituality to your program, just to keep them engaged, and never forget that side of things as well. And then slowly, when people start coming regularly, let's say for badminton on a weekly basis, and automatically they're praying namaz, they're offering salah in congregation, that itself, whether they plan it or not, it has some sort of change in their heart, right? And these are the sort of initiatives that we have to sort of plan very carefully and always put salah at the center of it.
And I think most importantly, even as you mentioned, for the fact that someone is there watching for you, for the fact that someone is there going through so much trouble to ensure that you are saved. In itself, starting from Khilafat and all the leadership coming from your office and your office specifically, to not only provide for them, but we want that discipline in the youth to also understand that this is being provided for you, but what do you have to also provide to for others? For example, I know you've done activities like the cancer research. You've raised funds. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So we, on an annual basis, we have a campaign called Mercy for Mankind Charity Challenge, and it's in the name of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, who was sent as a mercy for all mankind. And simply what it is we work with various national charities, and we've realized that this is something where a lot of people get involved, because fundraising for charities, it's something that everyone can relate to that. There's causes where a family member has maybe suffered from cancer, and then people start raising money for a charity that supports cancer victims. So we work very closely with national charity heads, and we organize bucket collections. So where we would maybe go to a shopping center or a train station, or an event itself where organized by the charities, and our guys literally turn up and just take part in the bucket collections. There's other events where Cancer Research in specific are running their Race for Life campaign, a huge national campaign in the UK, and we are working in very close partnership in providing volunteers. So not necessarily standing there to collect money, but actively getting involved.
Right.
And the great thing is that, speaking to the feedback I've had in the last sort of few months is, we provide, let's say, 10 to this event, and the organizers called me afterwards and they said, you guys are very resilient and trained. And I think this is the difference, that the volunteers that they get from a non-Jamaat batch, let's say, not Khudam, they turn up and they need a lot of explanation, and and you know, when things don't go as planned, sometimes they have to revert to the organizer and say, look, help us out. But our guys, you know, it's like throughout the early stages at Falul MD onwards, they are so engaged in events, and you know, you have to have a plan B, something. And the feedback I've been getting from these organizers and charity heads is saying, you guys seem a lot more resilient, and they can respond to a little problem quicker than others. And they said your 10 volunteers are worth like, to us, like 30 normal volunteers, because of the value they add. And I think that's down to the experience they have and the upbringing they've had in our community.
It's like it becomes second nature. And I know that recently you also engaged in even sending youth from here to like places like Africa to not only spend their money for charity or to help the people that are more less fortunate, you know, economically, but also to go there and take part in, you know, in physically seeing where the money goes, and also taking part, you know, in those exercises. So I'll come to you, Nasir Saab. Your youth, and I know myself coming from Africa, you know, mass migration of the youth to the West in search of greener pasture and illegal migration is something that's huge. From the Gambia to Sierra Leone to Ghana, trying to go to Spain and Italy using the back route, and people lose their lives. They're in camps, you know, when they get there, refugee camps, and life there is miserable. For those of us who are here and we see how things, how do we ensure? Now, this is the same community. Alhamdulillah, we see youth coming from here, going to Africa to serve, and on the other side, we see other members trying to come here to look for that wealth. How do you connect these two and educate your youth in Ghana to understand this better?
Okay. I think one of the things that we normally engage in is, you know, it's just, before I go into it, it's just like a bottle of water filled with, a bottle filled with water. When the water is full, you realize that when you start pouring out the water, automatically air gets into the water, gets into the bottle. So the same way, if the youth are not engaged in activities of the Jamaat, you realize that they'll be swaying off. So normally we organize these programs like, for instance, a league, soccer league. Many of the zones that we have, or the regions that we have in the Jamaat in Ghana, they normally go, or they organize football, soccer league, and they get themselves engaged in some of these things. Aside that, we engage in blood donation exercises, we engage in Wakara Amal at public places. And some of the things, or the feedbacks that we normally get is that, you know, Muslims are not seen to be doing some of these things back in our place. So when we come as Muslims to engage in things like Wakara Amal in places, public places, they get surprised. They get surprised. For instance, in Kolebu, for instance, you know, we are the first religious organization which organized a cleanup exercise in Kolebu, the biggest hospital in Accra, in Ghana for that matter. The blood bank, we donate blood. Ever in our history, there is no religious organization which have donated a pint of blood to the tune that we donated just ended Jalsa we had. The Kodam alone donated 1,390 within the 3 days Jalsa that we organized. So these are some of the things that we engaged the youth in, and tell them that, look, when you go out seeking for wealth, it is not anything. You know, it is not anything, because the inner satisfaction comes with getting yourselves towards the umbrella of Khilafat. Because you can go out, seek for greener pastures, but then if you are not connected to Khilafat, trust me, you are lost. So these are some of the things that we bring to bear to them, that, you know, even if they are going out to seek for greener pastures, their ultimate goal is, when even they go out, they should make sure that they are connected
under the same umbrella.
Under the same
Absolutely.
umbrella.
I mean, the discussion is getting very lively. It's getting very, you know, engaging, and I'm sure our viewers out there enjoying the discussion. But what makes this unique again is that connection that you're talking about. When a Ghanaian Ahmadi Muslim youth leaves Ghana and comes to the United Kingdom, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community's Khudamul Ahmadiyya is present here. If they were to go to Canada, it's present there. If they were to go to India, wherever they go, this organization is so well structured that the same spirit is found in every country they go into. That makes this community very unique. I'm afraid that's all time permits us. And once again, I thank you so much for joining us in this morning studio. I'm sure you have connected with the youth and parents around the world through this discussion. But until I see you again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.